Dr. Falchi, give us vaccines. Help all the people who have been quarantined. We'll wear our masks and we'll have to stay distant. We'll wash our hands and we'll be more resistant. Fauci, yes? Promise us, please. We'll have a cure that can fight off this disease. Restrictions will lift with some ease. Dr. Fauci, don't forget me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have you ever heard a song that beautiful before in your life? That is the grand wonder that Dr. Fauci inspires in people all across this land. People are waiting for their orders. They're waiting to hear what they're supposed to do. They're waiting to be told what their instructions are. All around this land, as we head closer and closer to the 4th of July, Independence Day, people celebrate independence. You celebrate their rugged individualism. And they celebrate it because that is what independence means for people today. It means waiting for the CDC to tell you that you don't have to wear a mask outside. Well, they said fully vaccinated people. Fully vaccinated people don't need to wear masks outside. That's what Axios reports. If you're listening on radio, that's what ABC reports. Now you don't have to wear a mask outside, only if you get Big Pharma's 2-dose prescription. But you still have to wear a mask outside if you get around people. This is what it means to live in America today. This is what happens when you allow your kids for generations to be raised by television in public schools and to eat toxic sludge with ingredients that you can't even list, the endless amount of chemicals, vegetable oils, sugar, and so forth that are found in people's processed food that they stick into kids because the TV told them to. We're in a situation where we are about to celebrate independence. But independence from what? Independence from what? To me, it looks more and more like independence from reality, from sanity. That's what today's America will celebrate. The television America, let's call it. Independence from common sense. Independence from liberty. We now are in a world where we have to wait with bated breath for bureaucrats to change their mind every 2 weeks or 2 months about what we're supposed to do next. India's health ambassador, this is a story, Great Game India, a journal on geopolitics and international relations. And a well-known Indian actor and ambassador for creating public health messages has passed away a day after he received the COVID-19 vaccine. Popular Tamil actor and comedian Vivek died this morning in the hospital hours after he was admitted after a cardiac arrest. The 59-year-old was reportedly critical in a Chennai hospital after a cardiac arrest on Thursday morning. He was brought in unconscious at 11 a.m., was resuscitated, and subsequently underwent coronary angiogram and then angioplasty. Medical bulletin said he was critical on the ECMO report, which pumps and oxygenates blood supply to the outside the body, but he died at 4:35 a.m. He took the COVID vaccine, Covaxin, and urged many others to come forward to take the vaccine. His vaccination was at a public event with TV channels carrying photographs of him taking the shot. As the cardiac arrest happens less than 24 hours after the inoculation, there were questions raised whether he died due to the side effects of the vaccine. Authorities, however, have said his death is not linked to the vaccine. The hospital said that he suffered an acute coronary syndrome with cardiogenic shock. There was 100% blockage in a vessel, and his cardiac arrest may not be due to the vaccination. All around, people see stuff like this, and they don't know what to do because all the TV and even radio, as you hear the garbage trash that the ABC network promotes on radio as news, when all it is they just say, today the president told us we cannot wear it. We can take our mask off if we've got our big pharma shots. Wow. I mean, that's not even a news. They don't even try to be news anymore. They're just trashy, low-rent Pravda. Today, the party tells us we can take our mask off. Isn't it? I mean, Trump, anytime Trump said something, ABC would say, today, without any basis whatsoever, Donald Trump said hello. Today, without any factual evidence and with baseless accusations flying left and right, Donald Trump said, this is the United States of America. I mean, this is how they would frame everything against the enemy opposition party. That doesn't mean that that's the good team. It just means that that was their loyal opposition, and they made sure that that was the villain every time you heard a news report from ABC and CBS and NBC. They're all identical. But they don't even hide the fact that they are state media outlets now. They don't have to be owned technically by the government, but their editorial content is. Their editorial content is managed by corporations who are in alliance with the establishment of our government. And that alliance wants more and more war. They want people who are predated by their corporatism to hate each other and hate each other about gender and race. And that's what they promote every single day. And many millions of people are turning it off. That's why Oscars is failing. That's why NBA is failing. That's why all these different politically correct, idiotic, fascist style, woke stuff continues to plummet and fall apart. But in the meantime, we still have millions of people who are singing songs in adoration to a man like Dr. Falchi, who was the genius who led the funding for the coronavirus research, let's say the gain of function research that was being done at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, even when allegedly the Obama administration had stopped funding it out of concerns for safety. He maintained funding for it. That's how much of a genius the guy was. This is the same lab that is highly linked with a lot of evidence suggesting it was where this virus came out. So we live in a world in which the public has become so stupefied that children are singing the songs in worship of a guy named Dr. Falchi, who all evidence points to being the incompetent person who spearheaded funding of gain-of-function Wuhan Institute of Virology research, which is most likely linked to the outbreak of this virus. That's the reality of America today. The children are singing the songs of the failed bureaucrats who unleashed, because of their own incompetence, a horrible situation that is horrible not only because of its effects on our health, because of people eating decades of government single-payer nutrition-advised food, but it's also been an excuse for idiotic, imbecilic politicians to begin instituting nanny state control to cripple the economy and try to remake it for their benefit and for the benefit of crony corporations. That is what it means to have a Build Back Better. It's the empire striking back. I'm David Granosky. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. We'll be back in just a moment.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Hello, this is David Granosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida. Or go to whiteoakpastures.com and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found Fintech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. Fintech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, Fintech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join Fintech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
So that's the reality that we live in, folks. It's a time of masked stupidity, masked hysteria. Idiocy has become the rule of the day. It has been this way in various ways for a long time, but it's just easier. So in some ways, we're in a better time because we can more easily see what's happening today in the idiocy that the television tries to sell to us every day. These dummies told us, Joe Biden's your hero. He's printing money out of thin air to save you after he's shut all your businesses down. The same people that, they were representing Biden's basically been on the same side of shutting businesses down, even if he wasn't in power. He was calling for lockdowns and all this. These stupid people, they don't realize, well, they do. They're just, maybe they don't. Who knows? Who cares, right? No, we don't really care what these failures that are in media and government, what their really intentions are. They're just creating a holy hell mess of everything. RedState.com reports food prices are about to soar right alongside gas and electricity costs. So stupid people who don't know economics say, and this is on the right too. You hear a lot of people say, oh, Trump should have just printed more COVID checks. That's how he'll win. And that has such a short-sighted, dumb view, because you can really cripple and destroy a currency when you're just creating money out of thin air, and you cripple the job incentive and the work ethic of people as well. And so, the article says that, in the weeks following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, costs of most of the food items found on the shelves of U.S. grocery stores rose based on anticipated shortages of such items that might result from transportation and logistical problems that followed the shutdown of many parts of the economy. There wasn't so much a shortage of goods to go on the shelves as there was an anticipated interruption in the just-in-time delivery supply line that keeps such products moving from processors to wholesalers, wholesalers to distributors, and distributors to retailers. Warning bells are starting to be heard about another impending shortage of consumer goods and food staples as wholesale prices of certain raw materials used in a wide variety of food preparations have risen sharply over the past several weeks. This steady upward price pressure is coming at a time when many fragile economies around the world are not in a position to handle a sharp rise in the cost of food for their populations. So with current energy prices soaring, any increase in food costs in the months ahead will be just like pouring gasoline on a fire. Gas prices jumped over 9% in the past month, and they're not expected to slow down anytime soon. Gas prices are up 22.5% from the previous year and were the biggest contributor to an overall increase in goods and services in the nation, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index. Fuel prices pushed a 1-month increase in the overall price of goods for March that was the highest in nearly 9 years. Rising prices for food are being driven not just by increased production costs or cutbacks in farm activity. A big part of the upward pressure on price is the increased presence of one particular country in the world market with plenty of money to spend, China. The most recent crop spikes follow months of price gains fueled by booming import demand from China. Corn prices have doubled in the past year, while soybeans are up about 80% and wheat 30%, with China's purchases continuing and a spate of adverse weather conditions threatening crops in Brazil and the U.S., there are a few signs of respite. Generally, people see this inflation continuing, said Tosin Jack, an analyst at Fintech. The trend will continue for some time, and it will translate into consumer goods. So I think that when you create money out of thin air, you're going to continue to see prices go up. And of course, the media will cover for their state that they worship, because that's where all the money is. That's where all the power is, at least for now. That clique of the Uniparty, that's where all the, excitement takes place. So that's what you see, though, is that when you have a media that wants to vilify and demonize anybody who challenges groupthink in any significant area where there's money to be made off of ignorance, the media will do everything they can to sell and proselytize you on submission to the state, particularly the Uniparty's interests. I mean, we found out today another lie. Yet another lie. Government and the media sold us over and over again to demonize the designated losers on the right. Julie Kelly says, another lie about January 6th bites the dust. In a court, the feds admit bear spray was never deployed against Sicknick or other officers. So that, remember, they said that Sicknick had his head bashed in by the Trump supporters because the media so dehumanizes anybody who disagrees with him and supported Trump that they hallucinated the most insane over-the-top accusations with no evidence that he was killed by having his head bashed in by a fire extinguisher. That turned out to be a total fraud, myth. And then the autopsy came out that he died of something totally unrelated to the January 6th situation. And then they said, well, he got sprayed by bear spray. Somebody sprayed him with bear spray. That may have contributed somewhat to his condition. And now we find out that no, that wasn't even done either. It's pathetic. This is your government. This is your tax dollars being used to demonize a political perspective that they are saying is not wanted. They want to let you know that you as a voter are not wanted to have a voice in D.C. That's what they're trying to tell you. You do not have a voice. They don't want you to have an opinion unless that opinion is submission to nihilism and corporate fascism, which is represented by the Republican establishment and the Democratic Party, which is the official good guy team of the Groupthink TV party. That's what it's all about. They are actively trying to eliminate and again, low information people get their information from the television and they buy into whatever they're being told. And so they're told that bear spray was sprayed, they believe it. They were told that this officer was murdered by Trump supporters with a fire extinguisher, they believe it. And then it all comes out wrong. It's all false. But because they're cultic media, bent on Luddite submission to state violence as the only solution for anything in the world, because they have so ingrained them to support whatever is considered the official standard perspective of DC, millions of people don't even know when the lies are exposed. They'll just go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But we're going to get into that. We're going to get into some of these myths today. We're going to get into the myths surrounding the continued failed policies about this virus. We're going to get into the ridiculousness of FBI spying on Americans without a warrant. We're going to get into what Falchi has been involved with and how that so-called esteemed place of science is actually not scientific. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we're going to play a clip from a Joe Rogan interview with a journalist named Josh Rogan, who's going to really expose the facts. This is someone who can't stand Trump. He's part of the mainstream media, but he just provides the facts surrounding the Wuhan Institute of Virology, China, and Dr. Falchi. So we'll get into that and more as we continue on A Neighbor's Choice. Remember, you can email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com. Drop us a comment on YouTube. I see some of your comments on Facebook and YouTube. We'll get to them as we continue, but we will see you in just a moment.
Politics these days are just that, politics. Pathetic discussions about things that don't matter, while the pandemic, crime, and economic disparity march on. That's why you need a balanced approach to news, business, and entertainment in the state of Florida. That publication is newstalkflorida.com. Whether it's the White House, the courthouse, or your neighbor's house, News Talk Florida has the sources, articles, video, and audio that will be a must daily check-in from your laptop or mobile device. Take a look at newstalkflorida.com. Today's news and entertainment with a Florida.
The CDC relaxing guidelines on wearing masks if you're outside and have gotten your COVID shots. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky.
If you are fully vaccinated and want to attend a small outdoor gathering with people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated, or dine at an outdoor restaurant with friends from multiple households, the science shows if you are vaccinated, you can do so safely unmasked.
President Biden says Americans can't let up yet, with just a third of adults vaccinated. Tomorrow night, he'll make his first address to a joint session of Congress. One of the topics, his $2 trillion infrastructure plan. GOP Senator John Thune says he hopes the president will reach across the aisle.
I'm certainly hopeful that the president, when faced with a choice, and he will have to make the choice, will decide to work with Republicans on an infrastructure bill that can be good for this country.
Republicans say the president's plan is too expensive. They've countered with a smaller proposal. I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Tina says online on our YouTube stream that sheep are waiting for the border collies to direct them. Pathetic. Soraya says it's so dumb, it's too hot for that stupid mask. Another one says here's to the algorithm. Aaron says Falchi is America's Trafalum Lysenko. Another says they'll argue that they mean well, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Another commenter says the left is Teflon nowadays, unreal. Another commenter says, sure, I'm going to take the vaccine and trust the same people that print away our purchasing power. I'm good, no thanks. Another one says the science says. That's the new incantation of people who know nothing about science. The science says. That's so dumb. Like even the word the, putting a the to it, and then acting like it's some kind of confirmed thing. Again, this is learned behavior. The TV taught them to think this way. The TV taught them, and again, what is the TV? The TV are a bunch of corporations that get tremendous money from big pharmaceutical ads for decades. And huge benefits and contracts from the United States federal government. So are they a neutral observer? No, they're not. And that's why the media freaks out when anybody thinks for themselves, because they say, hey, look, our advertisers own us. They own our mouths. Big pharmaceutical advertisers own the editorial content direction of these news outlets, NBC, CBS, ABC, whatever. And they have a wonderful relationship, apparently, with the social media companies, too. And anybody who challenges even one iota of their groupthink is turned into an enemy. So let's hear this clip first from Joe Rogan, where he disputes the official groupthink line from the corporate press, again, whose sponsors are the pharmaceutical companies who produce the drugs. They're telling you
21 years old, and you say to me, should I get vaccinated? I go, no. Are you healthy? Are you a healthy person? Like, look, don't do anything stupid, but you should take care of yourself. You should, if you're a healthy person and you're exercising all the time and you're young and you're eating well, and like, I don't think you need to worry about this.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you.
But there's a lot of jobs that will tell you need to have this.
Well, that's what's starting to happen now.
People are worried about them doing it for their children. And we talked about this earlier. Yeah. There's that you might have to have your children vaccinated. And, you know, I can tell you as someone who's both my children got the virus, it was nothing. I mean, I hate to say that. If someone's children died from this, I'm very sorry that happened. I'm not in any way diminishing that, but I'm saying the personal experience that my children had with COVID was nothing. One of the kids had a headache. The other one didn't feel good for a couple of days. Yeah. Like maybe, I mean, not feel good. Like no big deal. No coughing, right. no achy, no like in agony. There was none of that. It was very mild. It was akin to them getting a cold.
Yeah, and you can have this thing where it's like you were saying, this virtue signaling and this kind of like theatrical display of I get the vaccine, what a good person I am, I care about everyone. But you're like, look, my daughter's a lot younger than your kids, but I'm like, yeah, I'm not injecting my daughter with something to fucking virtue signal. Like, I'm not doing that.
Right.
If there's something that she's of no risk, statistically has no risk from, I'm sorry, I'm not taking any experiment on her in that. And that's my attitude toward it.
But it's amazing that that's controversial.
Yeah.
That even saying that I'm not going to inject my child with the vaccine is controversial.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Because again, we are not talking about even the flu that we just found out killed 22,000 people last year. We're not talking about that.
Right.
We're talking about something that is not statistically dangerous for children. But yet people still want you to get your child vaccinated, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, you should be vaccinated if you are vulnerable.
And see, for just saying that, right? These stupid, Luddite, idiotic media squawk box trash outlets owned by pharmaceutical corporations who provide all their advertising, they come out and they try to vilify a man for just speaking a different opinion. He's not even saying don't take the precious big pharmaceutical vaccine. He's just saying for kids, young people who are healthy, why would you go ahead and do that? We are having a situation, we're falling rapidly into totalitarian society until this stuff stops. Now, the good news is that Joe Rogan's show beats the garbage trash media outlets like CBS and ABC and NBC, like probably combined their outlets don't get as much downloads and listens and audience as a Joe Rogan episode. So that's the good news, is that, and that his audience tends to be younger. So one could say that younger generations, a large portion of them are voting with their dollars or voting with their eyeballs or whatever, and voting on media outlets that represent hopefully a more sane future culture, right? One can only hope that Joe Rogan's podcast, which is #1 podcast in the world, is indicative of a sea change in the culture that will just take a little while to permeate to the point of government agencies and policies and so forth. And we can only hope that, right? But, it is still discouraging to see that, so many people. We want to have a healthy left, is what I'm trying to get at. We want to have a liberal left that actually is liberal. When we don't have that, they're losing their minds collectively. They're losing their minds at a rapid pace, and they're becoming very violent. And because so much of the media institutions are dominated by these folks, it's creating a lot of vicious, totalitarian moments in our time. And it has a lot of potential to create a lot of terrible outcomes if it's not checked by reason and by intelligence and wisdom in our society prevailing against this hateful ideology, this dumb anti-science, pseudoscience mindset that is so prevalent in the corporate TV party. We want a left that actually has some common sense. It's okay. We want to have debate. We don't want to have crazy insanity. We don't have time for that. No wonder EVMagazine.com says over 50% of liberal white women under 30 have a mental health issue. Are we worried yet? White women aged 18 to 29 who identified as liberal were given a mental health diagnosis from medical professionals at a rate of 56.3%, as compared to 28% in moderates and 27.3% in conservatives. So over half of white women who identify as liberal between 18 and 29 have a mental health diagnosis. And that number seems to be high in other categories related to this white liberal mindset. They're the ones who are pushing the stupidity across our culture in all the different categories that affect our lives. And it's sad that we're in a situation where over half of young women, white liberal women, are reporting a mental diagnosis. How many more are undiagnosed? And they're told every day, do not ever eat red meat. So they eat their soy garbage trash, their soybean oil, their sludge. They eat lots of, plant-based goop. They eat lots of nuts and seeds, which have linoleic acid. Seeds, plants don't want you to eat their seeds, right? That's how they protect their seeds. They don't want you to eat them. And a lot of these people in that category are told to eat this stuff every day. So they're not getting the proper nutrition to have good mental health. They're not getting, they're told to slather up soybean oil and corn oil and all these toxic oils. And then they get them on medications and so on and so forth to mask symptoms, which creates more side effects. They listen to these hysteric idiots on MSNBC who push for war and then tell people that they stand for social justice. You cannot hold such contradictions in such flagrant ways without having a mental breakdown at some point. I mean, how can you say, I'm socially just, I will vote for a man like Biden who spent 50 years locking up vulnerable people for nonviolent crimes and militarizing the police and occupying countries for imperialist foreign policy? How in the world could you be so stupidly twisted up in your head that you think that that's somehow compatible? You've got to have a mental breakdown to have that kind of walking cognitive dissonance. And yet that's what we see from the people who persist in listening to the TV party. They're putting on masks for 2-year-olds. They're vilifying people like Joe Rogan who say, hey, if you're young and healthy, why do you need to take this vaccine? Oh, excuse me, Joe Rogan, you didn't know we live in a totalitarian state now? You're not allowed to say that. According to the people who hate science and hate love and hate humanity, you're not allowed to say that. These people are drones for a zombie, disgusting world nobody wants to really live in. But when people are in a lot of mental pain and mental hell, apparently they want to bring everybody into hell with them. And unfortunately, they have a lot of power because a lot of giant corporations make money off of keeping people in a state of mental hell, apparently. Why the hell else do corporations like Coca-Cola and these companies promote every little stupid idea that these people with mental breakdowns are pushing? Let's go ahead and play this other clip from Joe Rogan. This is very important. This is Josh Rogan, who we've referenced his research and reporting on the origins of the coronavirus, and we'll try to place different portions of it. I'll interrupt it and comment from time to time, perhaps, and then we'll comment after that. So let's go ahead and get that started. That clip with Joe Rogan.
So they hired the best friends of the lab to investigate the lab,
and Josh Rogan.
It's like hiring Robert Kardashian in to investigate OJ. You know what I mean? It's like, and when they interview these guys on TV, they always say the same thing. Don't you want the best friends of the lab to interview the lab? Isn't that we know the most about it? We're doing the research. It would be like Robert Kardashian being like, I know OJ really well. Let me do the investigation. I'll figure out the truth. I'll get to the bottom of this. Right. So anyway, they go to the lab for 3 hours, talk to their best friends, look them straight in the eye. Did you do it? No, we didn't do it. Okay, case closed. And then they concluded in their WHO report that the lab theory is very unlikely and we don't need to look into the lab, case closed. And everybody was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. We can't have that. These guys have a conflict of interest. Their careers are tied to this lab. If the lab were found to be guilty, again, we don't know. I don't know. You don't know. Peter Daszak doesn't know. Well, maybe he knows, but I don't think he knows. Their legacy, this entire project of $200 million rather, to dig up viruses all over the world would be kaput. It would have to necessarily be stopped, this whole industry. Okay, now here's the part where I'm going to get a little controversial. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay?
Sure.
Okay, so if I've gotten you that far, again, just to say that I don't blame anyone out there for having this notion that like this lab accident theory is kind of a kooky thing that like was cooked up by Mike Pompeo or something like that. I get why you think that. But now he's not here anymore, right? We don't have to argue about Trump anymore, hopefully, ever again, right? And we can just look at the piles of circumstantial evidence, and there's plenty of circumstantial evidence that it could have come. There's some circumstantial evidence that it could have come from nature. I feel that the lab theory has more compelling circumstantial evidence because, again, they were doing that kind of research. There was a huge cover-up, and the virus database went mysteriously offline somehow in December 2019.
There's also the evolution of the virus itself, right?
That's where Robert Redfield, who was the CDC director at the time, a trained virologist, he says, I took a look at this virus, and I concluded that it's so powerful that it must have been evolved in a lab setting. And he pointed to the gain-of-function research, and they called him a racist, a conspiracy theorist, and all the rest.
Yeah.
All right. Now, here's the controversial part. The godfather of that industry, the head of the pyramid, is a guy you may have heard of called Anthony Falchi.
I've heard of that guy.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you want to hear more?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Anthony Falchi, the hero of the pandemic, is the most important person in the world of gain-of-function research there is. In other words, he is not just him. There's Francis Collins at the NIH and some other people, but basically, he is the one dispersing all of the grants for this. He is the one who pushed to turn it back on after Obama turned it back off. That's a whole nother crazy story. He turned it back on without really consulting the White House. That's breaking news. Never been reported. Just broke some news on your show right now.
Really?
Yes. He consulted the Office of Science and Technology Policy, which is like a part of the White House, but he didn't, the White House put a pause on it, and then he like undid the pause. The details are a little sketchy. I'm not saying that he did anything necessarily wrong or illegal. I'm just saying that a lot of people that I know inside the Trump administration had no idea this had turned back on. He found a way to turn it back on in the mess of the Trump administration, because the Trump administration is full of a bunch of clowns, right? So at the end, you could get stuff done if you just knew how to work the system. Fauci is the head of that system.
Why? What was his incentive?
That's everything. That's his whole career. What he would say, and to be fair, again, to be perfectly fair to him, he's trying to predict the next pandemic. He thinks this is the way that you predict the next pandemic. By digging up all these viruses, we got to dig up more and more viruses and play around with them, because we're going to find how they evolve. Then we're going to come up with therapeutics and vaccines and all this stuff.
But there were no therapeutics.
Right, but we did have vaccines quicker than most because the DARPA funded a program to make our mRNA vaccines 10 years ago that actually worked. That was a military-funded program, but we can get to that in a second.
But that's not related to this.
Right. So that's a very fair observation. In other words, the $200 million program to predict and preempt the pandemic failed. To predict and preempt the pandemic, but it may have also sparked the pandemic.
But
Exactly.
Here's my question. When I read all about the research they were doing, I didn't see what they were doing to prevent it. I just saw what they were doing was examining these viruses and trying to find out how they work and trying to see what happens when they get more virulent. But what I didn't see is the invention of therapeutics. I
hear what you're saying. I'm willing to give these scientists the benefit of the doubt that their honest goal was to do good science to prevent and predict.
Oh, I am too. That's not what I'm saying.
I don't know if they produce therapeutics.
I'm saying, but did they have a lack of funding in that department? Was all the funding?
I don't know.
Allocated towards examining the viruses themselves and not towards developing some sort of a therapeutic?
I don't. It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
But what I do know is that the majority of their time was spent digging up viruses in the wild and bringing them back to these labs.
But Fauci, when he started it back up, did he start it back up with the intent to just uncover more information so we'll be better informed?
His argument was, this is vital research. The longer we pause it, the more danger that we're in. I'm trying to save the world. And so we got to turn this stuff back on, because this is how we're going to save the world from the next pandemic, which I'm sure he believed. I'm sure a lot of these people believed. But there is another school of thought out there. And the other school of thought is, hey, instead of taking $200 million to dig up viruses and make them more dangerous, why don't you put that money into monitoring and surveillance in the places where the bats are? In other words, if you put resources where the outbreaks are likely to occur, then you could squelch them when they pop up, because actually viruses change every day, and trying to predict the pandemic is a fool's errand. That's another scientific school of thought. That's not the one that Fauci's in.
Right.
But the reason that there's no debate about this is because the NIH and NIAID structure is such that everyone gets funded by them. They're funding everybody. So if you are in the field of virology, there's a 99.99% chance that you're getting money from Anthony Fauci in one way or another. Your grants, your careers, your chairmanships. So there's no dissent allowed in that community. I learned a lot about the scientific community and the virology community.
No dissent allowed. So no debate?
I talk to scientists all the time who say, I think this gain of function research is really dangerous. I can't say anything. I'm going to lose my grant. I'm going to lose my career. This happens to me all the time. And when Robert Redfield spoke up, because he's a big macher and he's a head of the CDC, he said it's my opinion that it came from the lab, because he can't declassify a bunch of classified information on CNN. Right. But he's talking about what he knows, right? It's obvious to everyone who's in the know that he's seen the intelligence, and he's not just talking out of his ass. He's not some Joe Schmo virologist. He was the head of the CDC. He's seen all of the secret stuff, even the stuff I never got a whiff of. And he went on TV and said, hey, I think this probably came from the lab. We should probably look at the lab. And he was called a racist and a conspiracy theorist.
But by foolish
what
people.
He's saying,
but Fauci's disagreed with him publicly.
Right. So that's the thing. So if you just think about it, just for once, again, I'm begging people out there, just like, think again. Whatever you thought about the lab accident, it doesn't matter. Whatever you tweeted in 2020 March, nobody cares, right? And the same thing for the media.
Let it go. Yeah.
Because it's all confirmation bias now. Like, oh, I tweeted this in March 2020 and I want it to hold up. Nobody cares what you tweeted in March 2020. Let's just have a rational
moratorium
conversation about what are the likely ways we got into this horrible crisis that we're in. And so for people in the know who are listening to Robert Redfield, it's clear that he's calling out Anthony Fauci. In other words, he's pointing to the gain of function research, which he knows, because he's the head of the CDC, reports up to Fauci. He knows that, right?
Right.
But he's not saying that, because even that's too hot for him to say. It's hot, and the scientists are not going to say that either. Now you have a lot of people sort of on the right-wing media and the MAGA media who've been saying that for a long time, but they don't have any credibility with the mainstream media. And I'm just like in that weird space where, like, I wrote a book about, U.S.-China relationship, so I had all this good reporting, and I'm not MAGA media because I criticize Trump in my columns all the time. So I am mainstream media, but I'm saying we should look at the lab, and it messes with people's minds because they're like, oh, why is he doing this? Why is Josh pushing the lab? I'm not pushing the lab act.
That's the problem today with these rigid ideologies.
Exactly. Everyone's on teams. It's all factional.
Yes.
But I don't care. I don't even care if the lab accident theory is true. If the natural origin theory is true, then great. I will lead the ticker tape parade celebrating Peter Daszak and Anthony Fauci down, Fifth Avenue. I'm happy to do that. All I'm saying is that we have to also look into these labs, and that we can't hire the best friends of the lab to look into the labs because they have a clear conflict of interest and they fucked it up already.
Catch new episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience for free.
We'll
only
go ahead and stop
on
the clip.
Spotify. Watch back catalog JRE.
There you go. So what that shows you there is that it doesn't take partisanship to tell you the facts here. It just doesn't have to be a groupthink, tribal, MAGA versus left thing. This is a person who clearly doesn't like Trump. He's a journalist in the mainstream media, but he at least has the honesty to try to present some of the facts surrounding the situation of this virus. He says if you're a virologist, 99.9% of the chance is you're getting some funding from Falchi. And you're not allowed to dissent from his perspective. That's not science, okay? That has nothing to do with science. A Neighbor's Choice will be back in just a moment.
David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found Fintech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. Fintech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, Fintech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join Fintech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
So they had a young man we played at the beginning of this show singing the songs about Dr. Fauci, telling him what to do. And it turns out Dr. Fauci is not running a scientific deal. He squelches all dissent from his perspective. There are many scientists, virologists, who have a lot of problems with the gain-of-function research lab funding that Dr. Falchi has been doing for years and years and years. But because it's not a scientific field, it's a political situation that's ultimately governing that field because of its monopoly of state funding. Remember, I've told you this before. Go back to the principles of A Neighbor's Choice and you can see this stuff a mile ahead. We talk about when you have a monopoly state providing the funding for science, it will retard the ability for science to progress because you're not allowed to have dissenting opinion. There's no place for Galileos. There's no place for Teslas. There's no place for people who think differently and think boldly and question failed paradigms. Dr. Fauci represents a failed paradigm of science. Failure. Fake pseudoscience trash, just like Ansel Keys. He will go down in history as a failed scientist when history is written. Ansel Keys has his information led millions of people to have horrible pseudoscientific, terrible information, false information, demonizing red meat consumption, linking it to heart disease with no science, and drawing people towards vegetable oils and low-fat, disastrous high-carb diets. And just like that, Dr. Fauci, too, will go down in history as a failed scientist. But the problem is we're in the transitionary stage where all the old dinosaur media circles the wagons because they're owned by Big Pharma, just like Dr. Fauci is, and they don't want to have scientific debate. Well, we'll have it anyways. We will have it anyways because humanity deserves the truth. They deserve scientific debate, not people covering up for the Wuhan Institute of Virology and Dr. Fauci's stupid funding of it, where this outbreak most likely happened. I'm David Gornowski. We'll take a break. We'll get into more news. But in the meantime, email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Drop comments on our YouTube stream. I see a discussion there, and we'll get back to them shortly.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Another layer of the pandemic beginning to lift. The CDC easing mask wearing for Americans fully vaccinated when they're outdoors, away from crowds, or inside with small groups. Today at the White House, President Biden marking the moment by taking off his mask to speak at the North Lawn.
Getting together with friends, going to the park for a picnic without needing to mask up. We're back to that place now as long as you get vaccinated. So go get the shot. It's never been easier.
So what can you do? ABC's Karen Travers tells us.
You can keep your mask in your pocket if you're out walking your dog or dining outside with friends. But the CDC recommends Americans keep covered up for crowded outdoor events, concerts, or sports games. Less than a third of the U.S. has been fully vaccinated, meaning much of the population remains at risk. But the new guidelines are a nod to research that shows the risk of transmission is considerably lower outdoors. Karen Travers, ABC News, Washington.
President Biden issuing an executive order raising the minimum wage for federal contractors to $15 an hour. That's up from just under $11, taking effect next year. It comes ahead of his first address tomorrow night to a joint session of Congress. The president will mark his first 100 days in office later this week, including a trip to Georgia. The White House says he'll meet with former President Jimmy Carter Thursday. In less than 3 hours, a curfew goes into effect in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Another night of protests are expected following last week's shooting of black motorist Andrew Brown Jr. Today, his family and attorneys saying an autopsy report shows deputies shot Brown multiple times, including to the back of the head as he was driving off. Attorney Harry Daniels says he was just trying to avoid being shot.
Shot this man while he had his hands on the steering wheel. He wasn't fleeing. It wasn't fleeing.
The deputies were trying to arrest him on a drug warrant. You're listening to ABC News.
Paid for by government.com.
Have you heard? A recent stash of 1893 $10 Gold Liberty coins has been found. These gorgeous 1893p gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 25 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling this gold find an incredible opportunity. Just call government.com at 1-800-333-2210 and you are guaranteed a mint condition 1893 $10 Gold Liberty struck at the iconic Philadelphia Mint, but with extremely limited availability. You must call now. These 1893 gold coins are still in uncirculated condition. That is 128 years of history you can hold in your hand. To learn more, call 1-800-333-2210. Call now and you'll receive a free American Coin Collector's Bonus Package, a $40 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-333-2210 now to secure your 1893p Gold Liberty coins before they sell out. That's 1-800-333-2210.
Coronavirus cases continue to surge in India, where officials say they're running out of oxygen and hospital beds. Health authorities report more than 323,000 new cases in just the last 24 hours. White House senior advisor Andy Slavitt announcing an effort to help India.
CDC, which has a long history of working with and in India on public health measures, will be deploying a strike team to the country to support the public health efforts there.
President Biden has spoken to India's prime minister about the crisis there. The pandemic prompting another delay in rolling out higher security IDs to board planes.
Time was running out for Americans to get real ID compliant driver's licenses or ID cards, or face not being able to use your driver's license to get through TSA airport security. But because of COVID complications and so many people not yet updating their driver's licenses, the Department of Homeland Security says it is delaying implementation of real ID rules until May 3rd of 2023. After that, every air traveler over 18 years old will need a real ID compliant driver's license or some other form of accepted ID to get past TSA security. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Toyota hitting the gas on self-driving cars. It's buying the self-driving unit from ride-sharing company Lyft for more than $500 million. This is ABC News.
Are you more than $10,000 in debt? Feel like you're on a never-ending treadmill, staying in one place and never getting ahead with those minimum payments? You feel like there is no way out? Don't let the credit card companies bully you anymore. There are programs in place to help you get free of your debt, and you don't have to pay the entire amount you owe. The program at Total Financial Freedom can help you get debt-free in months instead of decades. Call Total Financial now at 800-533-6605. That's 800-533-6605.
I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved two people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers, Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Garnosky. So glad to be with you again for hour 2 of our broadcast. We're soaring high across Central Florida on FM, AM, radio, affiliates. Happy to have this time of conversation, learning about the news together. You can also subscribe on our video stream. Just search for David Garnosky on YouTube or Facebook. Look for A Neighbor's Choice. You can subscribe to the channel to see us 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. That's drive time, prime time, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, weekdays. And of course, you can also catch all of our podcasts on demand at whatever platform you like for podcast listening. And make sure if you're there that you write a review that helps new people discover our show and join this new conversation that we hope to build into a real institution for the future. So many things to do in this world, but we have to be able to get past the toxic groupthink that bogs us down so much. And that's what we try to do together each and every day. I want to continue looking at some of the headlines in relation to this. First, I've got a comment about this increasing, disgusting corporate fascism, this nasty attack against liberties, attack against the Constitution, attack against the rule of law, attack against order and liberty that we have come to take for granted in America. Now it's quickly going away. Lauren Chin, who's a commentator online, she's a video commentator. She says, Nick Fuentes is now on a no-fly list. Just build your own airline. And Nick Fuentes has a tweet where he says, so I'm on my way to a press conference to discuss how I've been banned from nearly all social media and tech services, and then I find out that I can't even get there because I've been put on a no-fly list. This is overt political persecution. America is not a free country. So this is a young guy who is online, and because he has opinions, apparently, that are considered to be anathema, that is grounds to be put on a no-fly list. Now, I learned about this stuff, and as I learned about the no-fly list and stuff later on, I condemned it. And I condemned it back when it was being used to abuse Muslims. And we should condemn it now. We are living in a society where a young person has political views, and now they're not allowed to fly on a plane, treated like a terrorist suspect. Now, that's bizarre. You know, you can be a communist and you will get TV coverage. But if you are anything but a corporate fascist or a communist, according to, I guess, today's government, you're liable to be put on a no-fly list. That is insane. And again, that doesn't mean you have to support ideology. That's the whole point of having a free society, is that people are able to debate their ideas without being deemed terrorists because they have opinions that people don't like. I mean, we've got a guy in the White House today who was trained, according to his vice president. Kamala Harris says that our president was trained by segregationists like KKK Robert Byrd. KKK Robert Byrd had radical ideology, and he trained Joe Biden to be who he is today. And that man's able to be the White House president. But if you have opinions that are not a part of what Joe Biden, trained by KKK Robert Byrd, deems to be acceptable, you can be on a no-fly list. This is America today. This is what you want. It's time to wake up, folks. It's time to realize that the land of the free is not what it ought to be, is it? It's not what it used to be. It's not what it should be. And how is it going to continue? How are we going to continue to have a society if this is stuff that we allow to happen without massive pushback? We cannot accept fascism in this country. The Daily Mail says FBI combed through NSA's trove of Americans' communications without a warrant in its search for racially motivated violent extremists, when it was already warned the practice was unconstitutional. A newly declassified report shows that FBI trawled through vast troves of Americans' communications collected by the National Security Agency. Despite previous warnings it was violating the Constitution, the report reveals how the FBI continues to use warrantless searches for routine criminal cases. A single request from an FBI analyst for NSA data in connection with predicated criminal investigations related to domestic terrorism turned up 33 hits. It's unclear from the heavily redacted FISA court report whether it uncovered any criminal extremist behavior or made any arrests resulting from the searches. A senior FBI official told the DailyMail.com the FBI had taken numerous steps to comply with the FISA court guidance over the past 18 months. It comes as the DHS vows to root out domestic extremists within its ranks, and Congress ponders a new domestic terror law. So there you go. They're combing through NSA trove. Now, how come they can't? Now, here's the thing that's amazing. Combing through the NSA trove of communications to try to vilify and demonize and create a new failed war on terror on the American people who don't agree with corporate fascist policies like Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton butchering Gaddafi and this kind of despicable trash, hateful, violent foreign policy. If we just want peace, if we just want liberty, if we just want a happy, normal life, they want to put you in a demonization or put you in connection to someone who is demonized or whatever. But they're doing this. And meanwhile, why can't they come through the NSA to find out what Jeffrey Epstein was talking to? Oh, that's not what that's for? Oh, wow. So FBI can use the NSA to surveil, to go dig through every communication for people who went to Trump's January 6th deal or whatever, but they can't go back and look into see what that massive international trafficking ring was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. They can't go back and look at all his cell phone. Oh, they can't do that? That's not how it works? Wow. Oh, my goodness, you know? I thought they were just being benevolent little, seekers of justice. They can't do that? They can't do that for Ghislaine Maxwell? How does that work? How come they can't do that? That's weird. You'd think they'd use some of their resources to try to get some of these international traffickers like Epstein and Maxwell and find out who they were talking to and what they were doing. But no, they reserve that for people who go to protests that they don't like. Wow. That's amazing. This is the country we're living in. It's insane. We'll take a break and return. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. We're live. Drop comments on our YouTube stream or Facebook stream, and we'll get to them as we continue.
Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found Fintech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. Fintech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, Fintech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join Fintech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
A lot has happened that has prevented us from feeling like a community. Well, now that things have opened up a bit, let's get back to basics. As a foundation for our neighbors and family, God is a big part of bringing us together. It's time to get back to church. Uplifting, supporting, and loving neighbors that are cherished, not only now, but for eternity. Come on, you can use it. The Welcoming Committee is there every Sunday. See you soon.
Welcome to A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm your host, David Gronowski. We continue looking at the comments on our YouTube stream. Aaron says the empire has come home. All the tactics and techniques our government perfected in the Middle East are being turned inward. It's World War I all over again. The Token Survivor says, who came up with Build Back Better? It sounds like something stinky old homeowners association goons would think up. Well, it is a stupid, dumb brand. That's how you know it came from dumb corporations with outdated, failed boomer ideas and so forth. We're tired of this stupidity. We're tired of it. These people parasitically are trying to, strong arm us into this kind of disgusting, hopeless, corporate fascist, more rigged than ever economy, where they want us all working on Zoom or doing stupid stuff, getting our dumb little printed money out of thin air checks, this fiat currency garbage. They all want us fighting over who's going to get canceled and all this stupid nonsense, this imbecilic, disgusting, repulsive, nasty, stinky, like you said, it's a good word. It is a stinky, old, dumb brand. But these dumb parrots, they parrot it. The Canadian guy says it, right? That clown that paints his face. He says, build back better. They all say that dumb little line. And then low information people are like, oh, wow, they're all saying it. It's such a powerful word. It must be something very good. Oh, it appeals to a low resolution mind. And unfortunately, it works for a lot of people who have been catechized by the TV and government education for so long that they don't know any better anymore. They just go for whatever slogans or focus group tested on them and so forth. And it's true, the empire has come home. Remember Obama's president? America's chickens are coming home to roost. Remember he used to say that? We have been spending so much of our time policing the world, mastering how to make a mess of other people's countries. And now we said, I think we've learned enough. Let's go make a mess of our own, more so than ever. It's up to the American public whether they will take this time to educate themselves or whether they will continue to eat vegetable oil sludge and give it to their children. That's a good test. You know, you'd say, well, why are you bringing up food nutrition again? Well, as I've mentioned before, you know, dietary consumption of these vegetable oils are huge. It's a huge part of all the different epidemic of chronic illnesses that we have and the lethal experiences that people have with the coronavirus. But when you look at it, that's a good marker for whether someone's willing to make the choices necessary to get their liberty back and their dignity back from a tyrannical, failed paradigm of governance. Because if they can't get rid of the toxic vegetable oil sludge out of their kids, if they can't keep that out of their family, then they're not going to do anything. See what I mean? If something so basic and essential that doesn't taste better, it's not an essential food group, it's something that's not natural. If you can't kick that out of your life and your kids' life or your family's life, then that's a good bellwether for whether you're going to actually be able to do what's necessary to preserve liberty for future generations when you see it being challenged in so many different dimensions in our time today. That's a low-hanging fruit, in other words. A low-hanging fruit that gives you a good indicator about whether you're willing to do what's necessary to build the society that will be better for future generations after these failed boomers who are using all of their agencies to go after political dissent and surveil Americans and on and on and on, you know, creating chaos in Syria, chaos in Libya, unleashing a slave trade. These geniuses fail. Then they have the highest paid federal employee, Dr. Falchi, getting lauded as a hero for a pandemic that his research and funding actually most likely unleashed into the world. That's a backwards country if I've ever seen it. That's a backwards reality if I've ever seen it. You know, that's like totally upside down world. The media continues to promote everything that's upside down. Here's an example. Who is the media says that they're all about social justice and progressive values and peace and harmony. But who do they promote as their hero on the Republican side? Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney and those folks get the biggest buzz press of any Republican ever. And she comes from a ideology that wants perpetual war, perpetual surveillance, perpetual corporate welfare. That's what they think is the best of Republicans. Liz Cheney doesn't get bashed like Ron Paul does or Rand Paul by late night hosts or whatever. She doesn't get the hit pieces like Matt Gaetz gets, right? Because why? What's the difference? She gets the good treatment just like Obama and Biden and Clinton get the good treatment. And who gets the negative treatment? Tulsi Gabbard, Matt Gaetz, Rand Paul. What's the common denominator there? They're against the empire. They're against mass surveillance. They're against corporate welfare, generally speaking. And for that, they are demonized by a failed media complex. I mean, here's another thing they didn't tell you, probably in the NBC. The National Pulse says Fauci's NIAID scientists attended Wuhan Lab Summit, now wiped from the internet. This is by Natalie Winters. In addition to funding research groups collaborating with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Dr. Anthony Fauci also approved National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases researchers' attendance at a conference sponsored by the lab believed by many to be the source of COVID-19. The 2016 Conference on Viral Infection and Immune Response, hosted by the Nature Science Journal, has been scrubbed from the publication's website, but the National Pulse has located archived versions of the site. We also saved the Wuhan Institute of Virology's press release. 2 researchers from Dr. Fauci's National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases were in attendance at the 2016 event, which discussed emerging viral diseases, infections, and antiviral immunity, all critical to the COVID-19 response. Dr. Falchi has served as director of the Institute since '84 and remains the highest paid U.S. government employee despite a bevy of false prognostications and outright lies. At the time of the conference, attendee Kanta Subaro served as chief of the NIAID's Emerging Respiratory Viruses section, and Nancy Sullivan served as chief of the Biodefense Research section at the NIAID's Vaccine Research Center. Sullivan still served under Falchi, while Subaro departed the agency to become director of the World Health Organization's Collaborating Center for Reference and Research on Influenza. The October conference contained 6 sessions. Epidemiology of emerging viral diseases, persistent viral infection and immune dysregulation, viral pathogenesis, immune intervention and prevention of disease, innate antiviral immunity, and induction of systemic adaptive immunity. Among its organizers and speakers were several researchers from the Chinese Communist Party institutions, including the current director of the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the Wuhan Institute of Virology Director General. That lab also has a close relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, signing agreements for all-around cooperation with the CCP city-level governments. Researchers have also been granted awards from the Communist Chinese Party's Youth League and the State Council. The lab has also televised the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, saying during watching of live broadcast, the conference hall was in perfect order. Everyone's listening carefully to work reported by General Secretary Hu Jintao and keeping notes attentively. The atmosphere was charged with excitement and the room was resounded with waves of applause. The conference follows reports revealing that Fauci's National Institute of Health sent millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund research carried out by EcoHealth Alliance, the U.S. partner of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. They funded 6 separate grants totaling nearly $3.75 million, focused on understanding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence in China. And so for that brilliant idea of funding an organization that our own State Department was sending cables saying, don't fund them, their security is not very good, they don't have the best protocols in place, don't fund them. And this dummy, Dr. Falchi, stupidly took your money that you work for every day and funded them anyways in Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that's the most likely source of this outbreak of this coronavirus related to the bats that has wrecked your life and given fascist Luddites an excuse to destroy the economy and remake it for their corporate crony friends. How's that for a number? No wonder he's the highest paid federal employee. I mean, he's doing a hell of a job for the people that fund the federal government, isn't he? The giant corporations? Heck of a job. I mean, stupidly unleashed the biggest opportunity of consolidating wealth, destroying small businesses, empowering just a few giant retailers, destroying health for people, destroying mental health for people, conditioning children at a young age to be terrified of life. I see people stupidly sanitizing everything constantly. What that does to your liver. Putting masks on kids who are 2 years old as a form of policy mandate. All because of this guy funding a Wuhan lab, which our own State Department said don't do it. It doesn't have the right protocols in place. That's insane. And the television doesn't cover it. Television doesn't want to talk about it because they've got too many ads to run by Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and whoever else. They've got too many contracts with military industrial, contract deals and so forth. They've got too cush of a relationship with these folks. We'll take a break and return.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going off.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Fully vaccinated against COVID-19, the CDC says you can skip the mask outdoors unless you're in a big crowd of strangers.
Getting together with friends, going to the park for a picnic without needing to mask up. We're back to that place now as long as you get vaccinated. So go get the shot. It's never been easier.
A maskless President Biden making remarks today in the White House Rose Garden. President Biden's nominated Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez to run the Department of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The family of Andrew Brown Jr. releasing the results of an independent autopsy. It shows the North Carolina man was shot 5 times by sheriff's deputies, including a fatal shot to the back of the head.
Yesterday, I said he was executed. This autopsy report showed me that was correct.
Brown's son, Khalil Farabee. The S&P 500 missed another record close by about a point. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Keith on YouTube says World Economic Forum propaganda. Well, that's what ABC News Radio is for, to provide us our counter programming. I want to go on to some more stories here that are going around. There's thousands upon thousands rally against lockdown and vaccination passports in London. That's in a Breitbart headline. This is the event that the BBC and the rest of the legacy media tried to airbrush out of history. Thousands upon thousands of people marching through central London in protest over lockdown and the imminent threat of vaccine passports. It was by some margin the biggest rally held so far in the UK against the government's draconian Chinese coronavirus restrictions. While the MSM put a low estimate on the numbers, 10,000 according to Reuters, others claim the turnout was considerably higher. What's certain is that, as with previous anti-lockdown marches, the MSM has done its very best to ignore it. In order for Extinction Rebellion to get mass media coverage, all it has to do is persuade a handful of activists to go with hammers and chisels to smash a few windows at a corporate headquarters, and the story is everywhere. But when perhaps 50,000 or more anti-vaccine passport protesters bring central London to a standstill as they march down the length of Oxford Street, the event either goes unreported or is sneerily dismissed as a bunch of weirdo conspiracy theorists flouting the government's supposedly sensible and proportionate mask and social distancing regulations. Here, for example, is the BBC's specialist reporter covering disinformation and social media, pouring scorn on the event. Anti-lockdown protesters, she says, this is Mariana Spring, predominantly organized in Telegram channels promoting conspiracy theories about vaccines and pandemic, are marching in central London. There are placards claiming COVID is a hoax, the experimental vaccine kills, and the QAnon save our children. In truth, the vast majority of people at the event weren't activists, but ordinary folk of all ages, race, and classes who had had enough after a year of government lockdowns and who felt especially concerned by proposals to bring in vaccine passports. They considered these to be illiberal, discriminatory, and the precursor to a Chinese-style social credit system. Among the crowds, I was especially pleased to meet one of Britain's most distinguished movie stars from the 60s, James Fox, who had come along to support his son, Lawrence, who is running to be mayor of London on an anti-lockdown freedom ticket. Fox was among many opposed to vaccine passports, which he believes are not only discriminatory but unchristian. Suppose a church pastor is having a congregation come to him and somebody at the door says, we're only going to allow those people in who've been vaccinated. Would Jesus do that? No, he wouldn't. He accepted everybody. Well, it's a good point. Alma, a YouTube commenter, says they have a script to follow. Another commenter says, conspiracy theorist is the greatest wordings of someone with an agenda to do and either know what is happening or truly is just doing their job with faith in their master. Well, conspiracy theory is just, there's plenty of conspiracy theories going around that are false. But the ones that get labeled conspiracy theory are the ones that are not, profitable for powerful folks. The Russia thing with Trump was a conspiracy theory, but they never called it that because it benefited very rich military industrial complex, organizations and companies and bureaucracies. The conspiracy theory that was created out of thin air by the media that the Officer Sicknick was bludgeoned by the Trump mob, and then they came up with bear spray. All that stuff's been debunked, but it wasn't called a conspiracy theory because it benefited powerful entrenched interests in DC and corporations, right? They said that Trump didn't win the 2016 election fairly. That was a conspiracy theory, but it wasn't called that because it benefited the establishment of DC. They said there was weapons of mass destruction that would be used imminently in Iraq, but that wasn't called a conspiracy theory because it served the special interests that owned the television that told you they were most likely there, and the bureaucracies that said it too. You see, on and on and on. You can go after one after another. The critical theory is nothing but a conspiracy theory collection. That is a conspiracy theory, the critical theory. It's all this idea that there's a giant conspiracy based on these postmodern identity groupings that are intersectionally, mediated, and that the whole purpose of the world is power after power. That's a paranoid conspiracy theory, cooked up by the theories of Foucault and their disciples and so on, and his disciples. Meanwhile, sometimes history and facts still come out, even in these mainstream media outlets. CNBC says the brother of a top Biden advisor lobbied the White House this year on behalf of big healthcare companies. Jeff Rischetti, the brother of longtime Biden advisor and White House counselor Steve Rischetti, started lobbying the executive office of the president in the first quarter, according to new disclosure reports. The report shows Jeff Rischetti's lobbying activity on behalf of several healthcare companies took place from January through the end of March. In a rare statement, Jeff Rischetti told CNBC that he has not lobbied his brother. He also did not provide details on his recent efforts engaging with the Biden administration. So he's busy lobbying. He's doing the same thing that the Biden family does, using the taxpayer as a piggy bank to make money around the world. Meanwhile, other failed corporate fascist political advocates like James Carville are trying to come out and get ahead of the monster that they've unleashed by paving the way for the McWoke mob to become the dominant force of the Democratic Party. In a story in Vox.com, which has been pushing McWokeism and critical theory corporate fascist policies for so long, they have a story with James Carville where he says, wokeness is a problem and we all know it. He says, you ever get the sense that people in faculty lounges and fancy colleges use a different language than ordinary people? They come up with a word like Latinx that no one else uses, or they use a phrase like communities of color. I don't know anyone who speaks like that. I don't know anyone who lives in a community of color. I know lots of white and black and brown people, and they all live in neighborhoods. There's nothing inherently wrong with these phrases, but this is not how people talk. This is not how voters talk. And doing it anyway is a signal that you're talking one language and the people you want to vote for you are speaking another language. This stuff is harmless in one sense, but in another sense, it's not. He goes on to say, we have to talk about race. We should talk about racial injustice. What I'm saying is we need to do it without using jargony language that's unrecognizable to most people, including most black people, by the way, because it signals that you're trying to talk around them. This too cool for school stuff doesn't work, and we have to stop it. There may be a group within the Democratic Party that likes this, but it ain't the majority. And beyond that, if Democrats want power, they have to win in a country where 18% of the population controls 52% of the Senate seats. That's a fact. That's not changing. That's what this whole blank thing is about. He's all about power. That's what he's concerned about. Sounds like you got a problem with wokeness, they ask him. He says, wokeness is a problem, and everyone knows it. It's hard to talk to anybody today, and I talk to a lot of people in the Democratic Party who doesn't say this, but they don't want to say it out loud. See, they don't want to say it out loud, just like all the virologists don't want to say out loud that they don't agree with Dr. Falchi's monopolistic funding of gain-of-function research in shoddy labs like the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And I'm not saying shoddy in the sense that they didn't do anything at all scientific. I'm saying they obviously had serious issues with accountability, credibility, and security. That's why the State Department was sending cables warning about funding them. But you see how it goes hand in hand when you're paralyzed by hypnotic groupthink, terrified to speak out against fascistic type, herd mentality. You get that in everything. James Carville says everybody he talks to in the Democratic Party says wokeness is a problem, but they don't want to say it out loud. That's what he says. He says because they'll get clobbered or canceled. And look, part of the problem is that lots of Democrats will say that we have to listen to everybody and we have to include every perspective, or that we don't have to run a ruthless messaging campaign. Well, you kind of do. It really matters. I always tell people that we've got to stop speaking Hebrew and start speaking Yiddish. We have to speak the way regular people speak, the way voters speak. It ain't complicated. That's how you connect and persuade, and we have to stop allowing ourselves to be defined from the outside. So he's just complaining that he doesn't like the way, the woke stuff is branding his party. He thinks it's going to get in the way of him getting power. He wants power, and he's from the original, class of 1940 or wherever he's from, that wants the traditional corporatism of the Clinton era. They don't like the political correctness stuff quite to the degree of the McWoke stuff. He doesn't understand it, but he doesn't realize that his time is up and that his voice matters very little for the party that he now has. So he's just trying to stay relevant. For example, this story in populist.press says Black Lives Matter turns on Biden, saying his time is up, just like Carville's time is up. They're just making money off of all the loot that they've helped divvy up for their politicians that have been extracting wealth and extracting our labor for corporatism and corporate welfare and government expansion. Black Lives Matter says Biden's first 100 days are up in 10 days. By then, we need him to end 1033, which transfers military equipment into the hands of police across the country, including school and campus police. Another example, the military you see on your streets ahead of the Chauvin verdict. Biden is currently sending more military equipment to our neighborhoods than Trump did. You read that right. Our communities are being terrorized at a greater rate than they had been under Trump. They say his time is up. I actually agree with their point there about sending militarization, equipment. And that's what Detective John Beza, retired NYC Detective John Beza, has said on our program, that we shouldn't be militarizing the police. And they don't have any time for Biden. They want to push things beyond where, he's going to take it. They're just there. Look, these politicians like Biden and Carville and these people, they're just transactional. They don't care whatever it takes to get the power. Once they get the power, then they have the access to the agencies, and then they get to move and direct funding and everything and privilege and opportunity to their friends that are in the industries that, need government protection from competition and so forth. And that's just the way it is. And they're scared of this McWoke stuff because it's something outside of their control. And they don't know how to, how that's going to upset their gravy train that they've been used to getting. Because new people are going to replace James Carville and so forth. New people who have no time for him. They would cancel him in a heartbeat the moment they get a chance, are going to supplant him and throw him on the wayside if they need to, because power is all that these folks want. Power after power after power after power. That's all it's about. That's what postmodernism and critical theory ultimately leaves. It leaves a soul who is totally shrunken and wilted because of a never-ending lust for power. And when you have a never-ending lust for power, because that's ultimate, look, their whole thing is that language constructs reality, and that language is hiding, right, what is really going on, which is a power play constantly. That's the ultimate reality. Not love, not freedom, not liberty, not respect for each other, right? Self-awareness, things like that. No, power, power, power. That's all that there is. It's very Nietzsche-esque, right? And they're just cynically exploiting resentment to get power so that then they can get in power and they get to divvy the loot. People like Carville, they just want to have a seat at the table as they divvy the loot of your labor. You work hard. You have to pay the bills. You pay debts. Maybe you work 2 jobs. You have to deal with all the, rising costs of food because of the printing of money of thin air, the debauchery of our currency. You have to put up with all this nonsense so that people like James Carville and Joe Biden's family can divvy up the loot at your expense. That's the way this works. This is a very well-oiled predatorial machine. It's predating you, stealing your time, stealing your labor on this earth, putting you in stressful situations where millions of people just found out today that they don't have to wear a mask when they're outside exercising. I've been saying that for all this time. Everybody, anybody with the brain has been saying that all this time. But people who surrender their brain for acceptance into a herd, they can't hear that. All they hear is, tell me what chieftain says, tell me what chieftain says, tell me what the chief says. That's all they can hear. And that's a terrible state to be in. But that's how most of human history has been. It's been people in that frame of reality, failing to thrive, failing to innovate. You cannot have Wright brothers creating the first flying machine and so forth when we have that kind of mindset permeating our culture. And that's why I do what I do, because the only way forward through progress, the only way to liberate humanity from these oppressive tyrants is to innovate, is to create energy too cheap to meter, cures for these horrible diseases right under our noses without using patents or any obscene profits to make them, things that would dazzle our minds, elemental transmutation of rare earth elements, anti-gravity. Let's go make these things. Let's go create the things that will create amazing opportunity of wonder and self-reliance and independence. That is the future we have to fight for. Because all these people that spend all their time surveilling their political enemies and cooking up things to put people arrested for and telling people not to wear a mask after 2 years after we knew that was a dumb idea, all these things that they're wasting our time in, they're just distracting us from what we are here to do on earth, which is to make it better, to create amazing technologies, to not have to use traditional propulsion, to not have to have pollution. You can have low temperature nuclear, cold fusion is what they used to call it. You can do that. People are researching it. They're developing it. That's what puts us in the driver's seat of history. That's what liberates people from the bondage of these dumb tyrants. I just feel like we're just spinning our wheels here in place, wasting our time as these losers like Carville and Biden. All these people just extract resources from our labor and waste our precious time on this earth to make it better. And that's why I do this show, because I want to point out the news, expose the lies, and then point out the positive things that we can be doing in response and in place of wasting our time with politics. And I talk about the news to give people hope, to let you know that these ideas are ridiculous, that we should laugh at them, and that we should move on to build the world that we want. So many diseases can be cured, and the information is out there. We don't have to wait for these idiots to keep, extracting loot for their friends and family and saying, oh, one day they'll fix something or give us something. No way. That is a weak, fatalistic mindset. We'll take a break and return in just a moment on A Neighbor's Choice.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Lang, board-certified optometric physician and certified nutritional specialist, host of popular talk show Ask the Doctor. I've researched and developed an amazing new omega-3 product that you'll see incredible results with. It's called Fortify Super Omega-3 Max. I had one of the top Norwegian omega-3 research teams in conjunction with myself and Fortify Vitamins aid in the development of this advanced omega-3. This product is the most potent and purest triglyceride form omega-3 in the United States today. Omega-3 is great for all aspects of your health and well-being, especially in this unprecedented, challenging time. I'm giving a 25% discount with promo code RADIO during this viral pandemic. Go to my website, fortify.com. That's FORTIFEYE. Remember the EYE in Fortify. That's fortify.com. Enter the promo code RADIO to receive the 25% discount.
Neighbor's Choice returns. David Gronowski here, your host. Remember, go to our website, onneighborschoice.com, to watch our new film, our new Things Hidden film called Escaping the Cycle of Death, which is on onneighborschoice.com, where you can watch it, share it with your friends and family and so forth. It's a great discussion between friends around a campfire, which is the foundation and origin of culture itself. Culture begins with sharing stories and sharing a meal. And we've lost that connection in recent times where we're not having meals, we're breaking, I saw somebody say that their family's going to cut them off if they don't get the vaccine and they're a young person. How stupid, dumb, pseudoscience, idiotic groupthink is that it divides families based on nonsense, that a young person has to have, a vaccine when they're healthy and young for something that's not going to give them a hard time, most likely, unless they're eating, decades and decades of single payer nutrition science recommended food. Then they might have a problem. The Federalist.com says top 10 sickening details about how federal employees trafficked baby body parts. New emails uncovered by Judicial Watch's FOIA request detail how FDA employees were working with buyers to get fresh aborted baby organs for experiments. The FDA paid $2,000 per baby, at times adding up to $12,000 per box of harvested organs. The FDA bought organs of dismembered babies, livers, brains, eyeballs, hundreds of dollars apiece, working with Planned Parenthood. They sold the skin of a 21-week-old Down syndrome baby. They wanted fresh babies, fresh, never frozen. They asked for organs from late-term babies. They bought the skulls of second trimester babies. Busy abortion clinics produced awful specimens, they said. The FDA requested boy organs to create humanized mice. FDA and ABR employees called aborted babies amazing. And taxpayers paid for FDA trips to humanized mice workshops in Europe. This is what happens when society's lost its mind. This is the kind of society that we should empathize with the world when this kind of society wants to impose their worldview by force, by regime change force around the world. In Africa, Middle East, Central America, South America. No wonder these countries are fed up with our imperialistic foreign policy from D.C. This is the kind of stuff we want them to emulate by force. This is the kind of stuff we want to nation build back better Afghanistan with, and Yemen and Syria and so forth. We have got to build a robust, beautiful, personhood-centered society. And this is the time to do it. Spend time with your friends. Spend time with your neighbors and family. Don't listen to the CDC for anything. Don't listen to the FDA when they're doing that kind of disgusting stuff. I couldn't even believe my eyes as I read some of those things. I didn't read this before the show started, so I was reading it with you together. It's horrible. This is the society wants to build back. They don't know how to build back nothing. They're lost in nihilism. Lost their humanity. So don't rely on people who are in a sick darkness for what you should do to take care of your body, your health. Don't rely on them about what you should do in terms of your consuming habits. Just get outside, get some fresh air. Enjoy this beautiful world. Go to a country or go to a state that actually has liberty at least somewhat intact. Take charge of your education for your family. Stay out of debt and declare bankruptcy from these Luddites and stay away from their debt system. That's what it's about. I'm David Gronowski. Godspeed.